Welcome to i-TUTOR Economics NCERT series. In our last class, we discussed about infrastructure, and today we are moving on to a very interesting and important chapter, Environment and Sustainable Development. This topic connects directly with what we studied earlier because as we saw, economic development and infrastructure growth also impacts our environment. So let's begin and understand how can we balance development with sustainability. Now, as we move into the era of globalization that promises even faster economic growth, we need to be careful. We must learn from our past and choose a path that's not just about growth but about sustainable growth. But about sustainable growth or sustainable development. So in this chapter, Environment and Sustainable Development, we will try to understand how the environment supports our economy, how human activities have affected it, and finally, what steps we can take to make our development more sustainable. This chapter is divided into three parts. What are they? Yes, functions and role of environment, then state of India's environment, and also steps and strategies for sustainable development. Let's begin with the first part, that is functions and role of environment. Environment, definition and functions. Environment, let's begin by understanding what is meant by an environment. Environment refers to everything that we inherit from nature. It's a total planetary inheritance and includes all the resources that exist around us. It's made up of two components. Environment is made up of two components. What are they? Biotic components and abiotic components. Biotic and abiotic. Biotic means the living things like birds, animals, plants, forests and fisheries. Abiotic components means the non-living things like air, water, land, rocks and sunlight. Both these, that is biotic and abiotic, constantly interact with each other. For example, plants. They are biotic components, right? They need sunlight, air and water. They are abiotic components. So plants need abiotic components, or biotic components need abiotic components to grow. So when we study the environment, we are basically studying the relationship between living and non-living things that make up our planet. Okay, now let's look at the functions of the environment. Basically, what important roles the environment plays in our lives? The environment performs four vital functions. It supplies resources, then it assimilates waste, it sustains life by providing genetic and biodiversity, and also it provides aesthetic services like scenery. Let's look at one by one. First one, it supplies resources. These resources can be of two types. What are they? Renewable resource and also non-renewable resources. Renewable resources which can be used again and again without running out. For example, trees in the forest or fishes in the ocean. They can replenish naturally. What about non-renewable resources? They get exhausted when we use them. For example, coal, petroleum or natural gas. Once used, they take millions of years to form again. And the next function is it assimilates waste. What does that mean? That means the environment helps in absorbing or recycling the waste materials produced by human and natural activities, like the way trees absorb carbon dioxide. And what is its next function? It sustains life. That means it provides the air we breathe, the water we drink, and maintains genetic and biodiversity, which means it keeps various species alive and maintain balance in nature. And also it provides aesthetic services like scenery. That means it gives us beautiful sceneries like mountains, rivers, forests and so on, which brings peace, joy and inspirations to our mind. So these four functions, that means to supply resources, it assimilate waste, sustain life and also provide aesthetic services. So these four functions, the resource supply, waste assimilation, life support and aesthetic value are the key functions of our environment. Now that we know the four functions of the environment, let's see when and how these functions start failing. When they start failing. The environment, they can perform all these functions smoothly only when the demand we place on it within its carrying capacity. Carrying capacity simply means how much the environment can handle without being damaged. For example, if we cut trees but also plant new ones, the balance remains. That's within carrying capacity. But if we keep cutting more and more trees without replanting, then forests cannot regenerate. That's beyond carrying capacity. Hope you understand. Okay, I will tell you the example once again. If we cut trees but also plant new ones, the balance remains. That is within the carrying capacity. But if we keep cutting more and more trees without replanting, then forests cannot regenerate, and that's beyond carrying capacity. Therefore, carrying capacity simply means how much the environment can handle without being damaged. So similarly, if the waste we produce, like plastic, what are the waste that we are producing? Yeah, plastics, chemicals or smoke. They are more than what the environment can absorb or clean up naturally. It starts to break down. This leads to what we call an environmental crisis. That is what we call environmental crisis. Today, this is a global reality. The developing countries have a rising population, putting pressure on resources. And the developed countries have high levels of consumption and production, creating a lots of waste. They are creating a lots of waste. Who? Yes, the developed countries. Together, this has caused many resources to become extinct. Many resources are being extinct. Polluted and dried up rivers and water bodies. Now, water itself has become an economic good, meaning we need to pay for clean water. That is meant by economic good. Increased health problems also due to polluted air and water, and around 70% of India's water is now polluted. Around 70% of India's water is now polluted. So, and also global issues like global warming and ozone depletion, which makes the government spend huge amounts on environmental protection and healthcare. So in short, the environment can sustain us only till we respect its limit. But once human activities exceeds its capacity, we face environmental and health crisis which affect both nature and our economy. Okay. Now let's talk about global warming. Global warming is the gradual increase in the Earth's average temperature, especially in the lower atmosphere, largely because of human activities since the Industrial Revolution. The main cause is the increase in greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide, then methane, and so on. These gases trap heat in the atmosphere like a blanket around the earth, making it warmer. So let's look at some key facts. Since 1750s, carbon dioxide levels has risen by 31%, and methane by 149% above pre-industrial levels. In the past centuries, Earth temperature has risen up by 0.6%. Earth's temperature has risen up by 0.6%. That means 1.1 degree Fahrenheit. Sea levels also risen by several inches. So what are the effects of global warming? Yes, due to global warming, what happens? Melting of polar ice, or global warming are melting polar ice with a resulting rise in sea level and coastal flooding, disruption of drinking water, water supplies dependent on snowmelts, extinction of species as ecological niches disappear, and also more frequent tropical storms and an increased incidence of tropical diseases. Do you understand anything? Okay. When melting of polar ice happens, what happens? It will lead to rise in sea level. Okay. And it will lead to coastal flooding. Okay. When global warming occurs, it will lead to melting of polar ice, and that leads to rise in sea level, and that will lead to coastal flooding. And what happens next? Yes, disruption of drinking water from snowmelts. And when disruption of drinking water occurs, it leads to extinction of species as habitats disappear, and there will be more frequent tropical storms and increase in tropical diseases. So the causes includes burning of fossil fuels like coal and petroleum. What are the causes? Burning of coal and petroleum products. Then deforestation, which increases carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. Then methane from animals, or methane gas from animal waste and livestock. Then also expansion of cattle production. To fight this, in 1997, the UN Climate Change Conference, that means UN Climate Change Conference in Kyoto, that is in Japan, that led to an international agreement where industrialized nations promised to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. In short, our actions are warming the planet, and if we don't act, the consequences for humans, animals, and the environment will be severe. So far we have seen that the cost of harming the environment are very high. Pollution, then deforestation, climate change, all these have serious consequences for our health, economy and future resources. Now, an important question arises. Are environmental problems new to this country? And if yes, why? In the early days of human civilization, population was smaller, right? Population was smaller. Okay, industrialization was almost non-existent and human demands on nature were much lower than what the environment could supply. This means two things. What are they? Pollution was within the environment's capacity to absorb it, and also resources were used lower than they could naturally regenerate. Pollution was within the absorptive capacity of environment, and the rate of resource extraction was less than the rate of regeneration of these resources. As a result, environmental problems did not occur in the early stages of civilization. It is only with rapid population growth, urbanization and industrialization that human demand has started to exceed the environment's carrying capacity and giving rise to environmental crisis that we face today. Now, another major global environmental concern is ozone depletion. Ozone depletion. The ozone layer is a part of the stratosphere. Remember that point. Ozone layer is a part of stratosphere that protects life of Earth by blocking most of the harmful UV or ultraviolet radiation from the sun. Ozone depletion means the reduction of ozone in the layer. Okay, ozone layer means it is the part of stratosphere that protects life on Earth by blocking most of the UV rays or ultraviolet radiation from the sun. And what is meant by ozone depletion? It means the reduction of ozone in this layer. The main cause is chemicals containing chlorine and bromine such as CFCs, that means chlorofluorocarbons. That is used in air conditioners, refrigerators and aerosol sprays, and also halogens. Chlorofluorocarbons and halogens. Halogens means bromofluorocarbons, that is used in fire extinguishers. Therefore, the main cause in chemical contains chlorine and bromine such as CFCs and halogens. When these chemicals reach the stratosphere, what happens? They break down the ozone molecule, allowing more UV radiation to reach the Earth. This has a serious consequence. For humans, it increased the risk of skin cancer and eye problems. What about marine life? How will it affect the marine life? It damages phytoplankton, affecting the entire aquatic food chain. And it also affects plants by hindering the growth of industrial plants. And between 1979 and 1990, the ozone layer decreased by about 5%. And to combat this, the Montreal Protocol was adopted, which banned the use of CFCs and other ozone depleting substances. This is a global effort to protect the ozone layer and life on Earth. Okay. In the early days of civilization, the demand for environmental resources was less than the supply. Pollution was within the environment's absorptive capacity and resources could regenerate naturally. We have told it once. But with the population explosion and the Industrial Revolution, the situation changed drastically. The demand for resources, both for production and also for consumption. What happened? The demand for resources exceeded the natural regeneration rate of these resources. The absorptive capacity of environment was overwhelmed, meaning it could no longer handle the waste and pollution generated. And even today, this trend continues. What has happened is a reversal of the supply-demand relationship for environmental quality. The demand for environmental resources and service has increased, but their supply is limited due to overuse and misuse. As a result, problems like waste generation, pollution and environmental degradation has become critical global issues that needs urgent attention. Okay. Now let's move to the next heading, State of India's Environment. Okay. India is blessed with abundant natural resources like fertile soil, then hundreds of rivers, lush forest, vast mineral deposit, Indian Ocean and mountain ranges. For example, the Deccan Plateau. Deccan Plateau's black soil. It is ideal for cotton cultivation, which explains the concentration of textile industries there. And what about Indo-Gangetic plains? They are among the most intensively cultivated and densely populated regions in the world. India also has large mineral reserves like iron ore, then natural gas, bauxite, copper, gold, lead, zinc, uranium and more. In fact, India holds 20% of world's iron ore reserve. Note that point, India holds world's 20% of world's total iron ore reserves. However, developmental activities have put immense pressure on these finite resources. At the same time, India faces a dual environmental threat. What are they? What are those dual environmental threats faced by India? First one is poverty-induced degradation, where poor communities overuse natural resources to survive. Poverty-induced degradation. And the second one is pollution from affluence and industrial growth, causing air and water pollution, soil erosion, deforestation and wildlife extinction. So these are some of the most pressing environmental concerns India has to tackle today. Okay. Now, while India is rich in natural resources, several priority environmental issues need urgent attention. What are they? Land degradation, biodiversity loss, air pollution with specific reference to vehicular pollution in urban cities, management of fresh water and solid waste management. Let's look at one by one. First one is land degradation. Land in India is suffering from various degrees of degradation, mainly due to unstable land use and improper management practices. What about biodiversity loss? The rich variety of plants and animals in India is under threat, right? And air pollution, especially vehicular pollution in urban cities. That means rapid urbanization and increasing vehicles are the major contributors of this air pollution. Then, with growing population and industrial needs, clean water has become scarce. So there is a problem of management of freshwater resources, and also increasing waste generation in urban and rural areas poses health and environmental hazards, and that is the reason for solid waste management issue. So addressing these issues is critical for sustainable development and for ensuring that India's growth does not come at the cost of its environment. Okay. Now, you may have heard about Chipko movement, right? Chipko movement in the Himalayas, which focused on protecting forest. In Karnataka, a similar movement emerged called Appiko, which also means to hug. Appiko means to hug. So on 8th September 1983, when trees were being cut in the Salkani forest in Sirsi district, almost 160 men, women and children hugged the trees to stop the woodcutters. They stayed in the forest for 6 weeks. Okay, and only left when forest officials promised that the trees would be cut scientifically and according to the forest plan. The brave act saved almost 12,000 trees and inspired similar movements in adjoining districts. Why was this necessary? Indiscriminate felling for fuel wood and industrial use has caused serious environmental problems. Bamboo wiped out after the paper mill set up in Uttara Kannada, and broadleaf trees were removed, leading to soil erosion and barren lands. Rivers dry faster, rainfalls become erratic, and new pests and diseases attack crops. So both movements show how local communities can protect forest and fight environmental degradation. So building on the Appiko movement, the volunteers didn't just hug the trees. They wanted contractors and forest officials to follow certain rules and restrictions. Local people must be consulted before felling trees. Okay, local people must be consulted before felling trees. Trees within 100 meters of a water source or on a slope of 30 degrees or more should not be cut. What are those rules? First rule was local people must be consulted before felling trees. Then trees within 100 meters of a water source or on a slope of 30 degrees or more should not be cut. Now, why is land degrading in India? Some major reasons include loss of vegetation due to deforestation, then unsustainable fuel wood and fodder collection, shifting cultivation and encroachment into forest lands, then forest fires and overgrazing, then lack of soil conservation measures and poor crop rotation, then excessive use of fertilizers and pesticides, improper planning and management, or improper irrigation, planning and groundwater extraction beyond recharge capacity, then open access resources leading to overuse, poverty among agriculture dependent people, and so on. India, it supports almost 16% of world's population and 20% of livestock on just 2.5% of world's land, creating huge pressure on land for forestry, agriculture, pastures, settlement and industries. So, protecting land and forest is critical for sustainable development. Okay. Now, let's look at some critical statistics about India's land and forest. The per capita forest land in India is only about 0.08 hectares, while the requirement is 0.47 hectares. This deficit has led to excess felling of about 15 million cubic meters of forest each year beyond permissible limits. Soil erosion is another serious problem. Across India, soil is being eroded at a rate of 5.3 billion tons per year. 5.3 billion tons per year. And land degradation also leads to loss of soil nutrients. What are those nutrients? Nitrogen accounts for 0.8 million tons lost annually. Then phosphorus, it leads to phosphorus leads to 1.8 million tons lost annually, and potassium leads to 26.3 million tons lost annually. And Government of India estimates that nutrient loss due to soil erosion ranges from 5.8 to 8.4 million tons per year. This shows that overuse of land, deforestation and poor soil management are not just environmental issues, they directly affect agriculture, food security and sustainability in the country. Okay. Now let's talk about air pollution. Air pollution, which is a major environmental concern in India. Air pollution is widespread in urban areas primarily due to vehicular emissions and also in regions with a high concentration of industries and thermal power plants. Vehicular emissions are particularly concerning because they are ground level sources directly affecting public health or people's health. So to give you an idea, the number of motor vehicles in India increased from about 3 lakh in 1951 to 67 crores in 2003. Out of these, personal transport vehicles like cars, then two-wheelers, etc. made up 80% of registered vehicles, contributing significantly to the total air pollution load. That means out of these personal transport vehicles made up 80% of registered vehicles, contributing significantly to the total air pollution load. This shows how urbanization and increased personal transport has become major drivers of air pollution in India. And now, India is among the 10 most industrialized nations in the world. While this is a mark of progress, it has also brought unwanted consequences like unplanned urbanization, pollution and the risk of industrial accidents. Central Pollution Control Board or CPCB has identified 17 categories of large and medium scale industries as significantly polluting. These points highlight the major environmental challenges India faces today. Measures by the Ministry of Environment and environment and central and state pollution control boards are important, but real change requires conscious efforts towards sustainable development. So remember, development that ignores the need of future generation will deplete resources and degrade the environment, leading to both environmental and economic crisis. So development to enhance our current living styles without concerns for posterity will deplete resources and degrade environment as a pace that is bound to result in both environmental and economic crisis. Alright, that's the good place to stop for today. We have covered the environment, its functions, the state of India's environment and the challenges we face. In the next class, we will continue with the concept of sustainable development and the strategies to achieve it. So that's all for today. Thanks for watching. For more related contents, do like, share and subscribe.